This is one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. It's a moment of anguish combined with a moment of deranged glee. It's disturbing in the extreme.
Here's Johnny!
This moment from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining became indelible in the minds of moviegoers the world over. So much so that it's been imitated, parodied, and referenced over and over again for more than 4 decades.
Here's Johnny!
But what became of this object? The axe Jack Nicholson swings as he lurches through the Overlook Hotel. For decades, no one knew its whereabouts. Then, last year, one of the axes resurfaced, and it sold for more than $200,000 at an auction in London. While The Shining has been analyzed to death, the story of the axe is one that almost no one knows. It's as important an object as the Maltese Falcon or the ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. It's a relic from an iconic movie. So how could it have vanished, virtually forgotten, for so long? To answer this question, we need some context. What is it about this ordinary, off-the-shelf fire axe that created such a lasting impression in moviegoers around the world?
I think it is absolutely one of the most iconic props you're going to find in a horror movie.
This is Mike Flanagan, the director who brought the axe back to the big screen in the sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep, which was released in 2019.
The thing about the axe in The Shining is that it becomes tethered at a certain point to the camera itself. When he begins to swing it, Kubrick lets the axe drive the camera. It is whip panning left and right with the blade. The viewer is essentially turned into the head of the axe itself. And we collectively are thrown against the door. It's an incredibly striking sequence and one of the most fascinating ways I've ever seen of someone filming a weapon.
The way Kubrick shot it leaves the viewer feeling uneasy, like they're the ones swinging the axe, which is maybe one of the things that makes it so scary and so memorable. Before we go any further, we have to remember 2 things. 1, The Shining itself was dismissed at the time. When it debuted in 1980, the reviews were blistering. Some, like Variety's, were downright insulting. It was nominated for 0 Oscars, but it was a contender for Best Director at the Razzies. Even Stephen King famously despised this adaptation of his book, and he remains one of the few today to still hold that grudge. Over time, The Shining's esteem evolved. Its unsettling rhythms were ahead of its time. But in its actual time, it was dismissed as a misfire by a master. So a prop from such a film would not have been regarded as anything special when the film debuted. The other thing to remember, it's just an axe. And back before there was a thriving market for movie props, the weapon Jack Nicholson used to menace both his family and the viewers watching curled up in their seats was just another tool.
There was really no value attributed to these artifacts whatsoever. It was a disposable part of the production process.
This is Stephen Lane, CEO of Prop Store, one of the largest vendors of rare film and TV memorabilia. Remember the guy from earlier holding the axe? That's him. But we'll get back to that.
And during that period, at the end of production, the fate of the props and costumes would have a few different paths. They'd have an end of production sale. Some of the material may go back to a rental property, and then anything that was really left over, maybe a little bit of it get held onto by producers or directors or talent. The rest of it would just be disposed of, thrown away.
The props for The Shining were no different. I reached out to Jan Harlan, The Shining's executive producer and Stanley Kubrick's brother-in-law, and he had this to say about the axe. The axe was, as you say, an everyday object one expects to find among the tools in this sort of hotel. We bought several to have spares for this key prop. I used to have one in my house for many years too, after the filming. My wife threw it out. Straight to the landfill, never to be seen again.
You know, the amount of people I've spoken to who, for example, from Star Wars, who took Stormtrooper helmets home. They were given Stormtrooper helmets and their kids just wanted to play with them, and they played with them and played with them, or Stormtrooper blasters. And they just smashed them all up and then they threw them away at the end of it. You know, the last Stormtrooper helmet that we sold for nearly $250,000.
So back in 1979, when The Shining wrapped, they did what many productions at the time would do and had an end of production sale for the crew, kind of like a garage sale. And the axe in question, the one that went for over $200,000 in 2019, it was sold to a construction worker for just about £5.
This particular gentleman bought the fire axe for £5 to take it home as a wood chopping axe. So he bought it for fully practical purposes, nothing else.
And the axe would remain in his possession, sitting in his shed for the next 26 years. Now, when we're talking about this axe, it's important to remember that there wasn't just one of these on set. Prop departments have a saying which goes, if you have one, you have none. Because on a production of that scale, there will always be multiples of the same item in case something goes wrong.
So there were many axes constructed for the production. There would have been hero versions, you would have had stunt rubber versions, maybe biscuit foam lightweight versions, special effects versions with plates connected to them to strap onto a torso once they've been impaled, and maybe bloodletting versions as well. So there would have been numerous versions that would have been created for the film.
What we're interested in, and what most collectors care about, is the hero axe, the one that was actually intended to be used in scenes with Nicholson breaking down the door. There are probably a few of these out there, but not many. We know there would have been a number obtained for the production, and we know at least one was owned by Jan Harlan, whose wife tossed it away, while one went to the construction worker who bought it for £5 to chop wood in 1979. So the question is, what happened next?
Well, finding so much of these treasures used to be through networking. So it was all about meeting people, crew members who worked in the film industry, either current or retired, and then finding out who they knew and what they'd heard might be in somebody's private collection. And I was chatting with a friend of mine who was a plasterer at Pinewood Studios. He phoned me up and he said, yeah, my friend's bought this axe in from The Shining. Do you want to come down and see it at Pinewood and have a look at it? I was just like, yep, I'm coming right now. I was literally poof, straight out of the door on the way to the studios and met with this lovely gentleman who worked extensively throughout the entire production of The Shining. And then he pulled out this axe out the back of his van. And there it was. It was a hero shining axe, a full metal hero construction head, the wooden handle to it as well. You know, we had a long discussion about what it really was, what its inherent value was now as a piece of memorabilia, as a piece of movie history. And I explained to him that I'd be willing to pay thousands of pounds for it, which knocked him off his socks. And we managed to conclude a deal that afternoon in Pinewood Car Park.
Do you recall what year it was that it came into your possession, that it ceased being stored in the corner of a shed and started being stored in museum conditions?
Yeah, I bought the axe back in 2005. 15 years, loved every moment of it.
Why did you decide it was time to put it up for sale?
We're all only temporary custodians of any of these artifacts. You know, I'm not going to be buried with it. I think it's just as a period of recognition of, okay, I've had my time with this, and it was just time for it to find a new home.
So in September 2019, the axe goes up for auction in London.
I saw a background video from the prop store exhibit at Comic-Con, and I noticed an axe. And my first thing was like, no, that can't be the axe from The Shining.
Well, the estimated price on the axe for auction day was £40,000 to £60,000, and I had really no indication of which direction it might go from there.
Lot number 619, The Shining here, The Shining, and we are on to Here's Johnny.
I knew it was going to be the only piece I wanted to go after.
And then obviously in an auction to drive a price north, you really only need two passionate people who really want it.
We're already at £80,000, ladies and gentlemen.
There was a phone bidder who was bidding very heavy for it.
Telephone bidders, are you coming to play?
Internet bidder, there was room bidding as well.
There's a small battle going on online.
So it was going all different directions at the same time. And it just kept on going.
110,000, 120,000.
And going.
130, 140.
When I put my max bid in, my anxiety went down a little bit because, it's over with now. The number's in there. I'm comfortable with it.
Selling once, selling twice.
And, when the gavel went down, eventually, there was just a huge roar in the room.
£140,000 and sold!
There are many more collectors today than ever before, but most start from a place of wanting to own a piece of their favorite film in reality, pulling something from the screen into their own hands.
My name is Matthew Dalton, and I'm the current owner of The Shining axe. I began collecting 8 years ago because I was bullied in high school. I got anxiety from it, and I actually ended up dropping out of school. I didn't really have too many friends. So I began just watching all sorts of movies. It was like my biggest escape from reality. And I thought to myself, you know, I want something from these movies. I want some like Hollywood history, if you will.
You mentioned that you were mistreated, that you were bullied, and you developed anxiety. I think it might seem counterintuitive to some people to think that you could find refuge in horror films. But why is that a genre that's meaningful to you? Like, why did it help you?
You know, it's scary, but at the end, it's really relieving when they finally defeat the demon or ghost. And The Shining was one of the first horror movies I saw, like ever. And it had such a deep impact on me. I just found so many horror movies I ended up watching, and that's what led me down the path to wanting to collect.
So, the axe that was once carried by Jack Nicholson was sold to a crew member and spent 26 years gathering dust and rust in a shed. It was bought by Steven at Prop Store, and now it's here.
The first time I actually held the axe, I was just so ecstatic. You can tell there's some marks on the edge of the blade, like some tiny scratches, maybe some tiny dents. And you can tell the handle is definitely been used. Like, this was used a lot. And you can just see like these details, especially like right up here by the handle. I love the marks, I love the wear. It makes it so much more authentic and better. You know, the movie was made 40 years ago. One of my all-time favorite horror movies, and just holding something used from the actual movie, it's just crazy to think about. You know, like Jack Nicholson actually held this and used it in the movie. It just makes you want to swing it, you know?
Hopefully not into anyone.
No.
And what do you plan to do now with this collection? Is it something you keep private, or do you plan to show it off to other people?
Well, this is just my actual private museum collection. But in the future, I would like to get space, and I would love to show these objects off to people because, like, they need to be seen by people. My collecting has been such a positive influence on my life. It's helped me meet so many new people. Everyone likes the movies, you know, some people don't like horror movies, but the ones that do, they're just mind blown by all this. They think it's one of the scariest rooms they've ever been in.
It's hard to ignore the fact that this was once a standard off-the-shelf axe that was bought for a few pounds in 1979, and now it's worth over $200,000. There's nothing special about the object itself. Its value comes solely from the fact that it has escaped the screen and our imaginations to exist in real life. The axe almost has the same power as a weapon used in a crime, maybe because it terrorized us for generations on the screen. Like the Overlook itself, it has a power about it. Imagine it all those years in the dark, gathering dust. Now that it's been found all these years later, it still feels a little dangerous. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed following the axe story as much as I did. We'd love to know, what prop do you want to know the history of next? Let us know in the comments below.